Hello, I'm Sheila Myers and welcome to my video today. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator and my blog is called Stamping Wishes. So if you were at my blog the other day, I posted this card that I made using our new stamp set that is called Picked for You. And once I posted, I got a couple of questions on what I use to get the different colors in my apple. So I thought instead of making a card today, we'll just work on the two techniques that I've used to make this card. Just a quick explanation of the card. You'll see these little strips on the side. I use the stamp set that is called Healing Hugs. And the leaves that are in there are what I use as a pattern to stamp on the Mellow Moss and get these different effects. This is on Pear Pizzazz, and then this is from our designer paper. And so anyway, this is what I used, and I don't know if you can see the sparkle in it, but I used my Wink of Stella on it, and in person it looks gorgeous in here the way it catches the light and sparkles. So let me go ahead and show you a couple of the other items, and this is the stamp set. Let me go ahead and show you that Picked for You that we're using. It's a photopolymer stamp set. I was so glad to see Stampin' Up! Put something out for teachers, because I feel like we need to tell them more often how much we appreciate them and the time they spend with our children. And they just do a terrific job, and not everybody can be a teacher. So I just think that we need to let them know how more often how much we really appreciate what they do. So we're going to use this stamp set, and let me kind of show you, because I've got them laid out here in the order. On the actual printed side here, and I don't know which way it's going to see the best. I'm going to go ahead and pull this off so it's not making maybe as quite of a glare. But this first one up here, it has a number 1 on it, so it tells you your first color you want to stamp with this. Then here it has a number 2, so that would be your second color, and 3 would be your third color. And then they have the stem that fits into this whole design, which would be your fourth stamping technique. So I've got them all set up here on my extra slide of my Stampin' Up! Stamparatus. And so that way it's all in order and ready for me to go. Now there's 2 different techniques done here. This one that you see is similar to the way I did it in the card, is done using the stamp pads. The colors that I use is I start off with Flirty Flamingo, and then I go to the Poppy Parade, and then to Cherry Cobbler. And in between all of that, I am using my brushes for watercolor technique and stuff like that to blend some of the colors in a little bit more. I also bring in some either Daffodil Delight or So Saffron. And also I have this yellow brusho, which I'm going to show you as the second technique. Okay, so this one's done with stamping pads, and I do have, you can probably see the sparkle in it here. And the stem is done with soft suede. And then in this particular one, I did use brusho and watercolor technique. And what I used was the Brilliant Red, the Gamboge, and then the yellow. And so if I have those mixed up already, then I like to use a tap of that yellow because it's a little bit brighter. One of the other things I used in here that you'll see in that the greenish was I squeezed some of the ink from the Granny Apple Green stamp pad and blended a little bit of that in with the yellow, because as you can see, here's an apple, pretty big apple here, that is the Honey Crisp, and from depending on which angle you look at it, you might get more of your yellows and greens or more of the Flirty Flamingo colors kind of in here, and then more of your red colors that are in here. So again, it just depends on what you're looking at and what kind of color you're wanting to get with the apple. And I prefer to try and get some highlights in with the apple without putting too much of the green, unless I was doing a Granny Apple Green apple, which would be pretty too. So okay, well, let's go ahead and get on with our technique. I'm going to set these aside here. And some of the papers that I will use during the techniques, this is the shimmery white cardstock. It's a little bit thicker. I like the shimmer behind it. I like the fact that you can do a little bit of watercoloring on it without the paper starting to peel on you. Then this is Whisper White, but it's a thick Whisper White, and this allows me again to, I use that actually on the brush show technique. I use some of this instead of the watercolor paper. And then on the other one, I did use the watercolor paper, which kind of gives you some of that lighter, because the paper kind of absorbs it, plus it has a texture on it, so you're going to get that moving with you as well. So let's go ahead, and I think we'll do the stamp pad colors first. So let's go ahead and use some of the watercolor paper and show you how we do that. Okay, so this is our number 1 stamp, and you want to lay it down on your paper where you want it. And I usually cut out all of my apples. I don't leave any of them on. I may use part of the paper, like over here, to stamp my leaves from that other stamp set. Healing Hugs, which I really think makes a pretty leaves with it, as you can see here, because when you stamp it, it automatically gives you the 2 colors that are going on in here. So I really like that look. Okay, so I like to come in here and do my V, and that's the reason for that is each one of your pieces are going to have this V. I'm going to be cutting it out. I could erase it too, but I usually don't use the other portions of whatever cardstock that I'm using, whether it's the watercolor paper or the thick Whisper White or the shimmery white. I'm not going to use that area, so I go ahead and put that in, and that way all of my pieces, I have a lining up that will line me up each time that I go into it. So the first color that we're going to use is the Flirty Flamingo, and you can use your aqua painters. They work real well, but I also like to use paint brushes because I can control my water a little bit better. If I need any water, then I'll dip in and get my brush wet. And you can also use your blends, but there's something about the just the brushing of it that I really like that technique when I'm watercoloring. So it's whatever you feel comfortable with. Now, as you can see, when we first start on this, it's looking like it didn't stamp a whole lot of it, so we'll go a second time. Again, a good reason to be using your Stamparatus, so you can just go back over as many times as you want to get the deeper colors if that's what you're looking for. So we're going to press down a little bit more on this and transfer some of that ink over into the watercolor paper. Yeah, there you can see how it has blended in. So I've got a little container of water over here and some extra paper towels. So we're going to just dampen my brush a little bit, and I want to use a stroking method in the shape of the apple. Whenever you're doing an apple, you usually have that kind of curved look, and so all of my colors, as I do this, that's what I'm wanting to do with it. Okay, so this is the way this apple came out, and like I said, I'm real pleased with it. I like that green coming up underneath it. It gives it a little bit different, and you can continue blending on those. Like I blended this out probably a little bit more than I did, but I wanted more of the color to be prominent in this one than I did with this technique that I had done earlier. So let's go ahead and move on now to the brush show technique of watercoloring. And that's what we're going to be doing that on. And we're going to use some of the Whisper White, I think, for that. And this, again, is the thick Whisper White. It's not the our normal. And I'm going to bring this on over so that we can prepare the palette up here. I'm going to use the Brilliant Red first. And I like to get a lot of the color on there. And I'm going to use an eyedropper to put my water in there, and sometimes I get a little bit too thick, you know, when I'm doing it, but I can also thin that out with a little bit of water from the paintbrush as well. The next color I'm going to use is the Gamboge, and it's got the oranges in it, but it's a really pretty mixture with that red for the apple. And then we're going to use the yellow. Now in this technique, because I'm going to actually be painting onto the stamp itself, I liked, again, to start off with that Flirty Flamingo, because I like that pink undertone, and since we don't have that color in our brush show, then I'm going to do a combination of both of them there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my dropper here and get me a little bit of water. Okay, and you can use your brush to kind of stir it up and get it going so that all my colors are ready. And I may add a little bit more water here. Trying to get just a tap of water without over diluting it. All right, so let's go ahead and put our colors over here. And like I said, the first stamp, which is our number 1 stamp, I want to use the Flirty Flamingo in that. So I'll use it just like I did for the other technique we were just doing. I'm going to position this on the paper where I want to stamp, and I'll take and draw my pencil V again just to help me line it up. Even though you can kind of see, you know, where it goes, I just like the look that or the ease of having that V to line right up to. Okay, so but again, try and pull some of those colors out so you have that layering going on with the apple, which a natural apple will have that extra coloring. Okay. I really, once I started playing with the brush shows, I kind of liked the look of the brush show. I was able to get that brighter red. So it's just really depending on what kind of results you want from it as to what you should use, you know, whether you use your stamp pads or just exactly what you want to use on them. And you can actually use some of your markers on these just like you would do on a regular stamp. You can color it with markers and use it that way as well. So just experiment with it, because I'm really having a lot of fun trying to find different techniques that I can use this stamp set with and get different results each time. Okay, this next time we're going to come in and I'm actually going to paint. I'll move this over a little bit. Hopefully it's in the camera. I'm going to paint on some of the orange which is coming from the gamboge of the brush show. And I'm just going to color over all the areas of the stamp. And come over here. And as you can see, it brought some of the orange colors, and since I have this brush out, I'm just going to go ahead and bring some of those colors in as well into the other areas. Okay. So now I want to bring in a little bit of that yellow that we were talking about earlier. So that some of my highlights will come out from the yellow. And if you notice, and this is part of the stamp though, but because we are using a different medium with it, and we don't have the watercolor paper to distort it, you'll see the little dots. Well, an apple actually has those little dots in it, if you'll notice. See all the little specks that come up from it? So there again, the stamp set really does, they did a terrific job on giving all of the colors that you need and textures to make the fruit look so realistic when you finish painting on it. Yeah, I like the way that looks. Okay, so now we're going to bring in our last one. And I actually, and we'll see how, because again, I kind of look at how it does each time and what I'll add to it. But after I put on the brush show, I actually came back a second time and stamped with the cherry cobbler on top of the brush show. And that way I got actually 4 shades of the reds going on and the light. So I'm coloring on the stamp just like I showed you before. I'm not going to shift it around, and I'm hoping this is in, and if it's not, I do apologize. I'm still trying to see where my ranges are. So we're going to go ahead and come down into the stamp, and this is with the Brilliant Red from the brush show that we're using. And here's our red, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that red on in. Time to get some of this color on, and then we'll go ahead and put some of the cherry cobbler to bring out more of the brilliant deeper red tones that the stamp pad will give. And again, I like to keep kind of a circular motion going on with my colors and stuff, because again, I'm trying to keep that rounded look into it, and not so much just a solid painting on top of it. And again, don't be afraid to go outside the lines, because you are going to be cutting this down. I think I'm pleased with the colors we're getting here. Let's go ahead and put just a little bit of blending into this area here. Okay, it's really looking beautiful. Okay, so now I'm going to clean this off, the brush off of it, and I'm going to bring in the cherry cobbler and stamp that onto it on top of this. Okay, so again, you can bring that wet ink into it so you don't get quite the level of line markings there, but again, keeping that natural shadowing going on. And I like to spread some of this cherry cobbler that I just did with going back into the brush show for my wetting solutions. I think I'm going to bring just a little bit more of the red into this area here. And again, you color until you're pleased with what you're getting from it. But it's really a lot of fun to play with the different techniques and all the terrific things that Stampin' Up! Has provided us to be able to do these different artistic techniques. All right, I'm happy with that. So just kind of tone down a little bit of the brightness there. And now I think we're ready for our stem to go in. Okay, let's line our stem up and set this off to the side. And again, using our V, we'll just line this up. Yeah, whenever they want to stick to you instead of letting go of you, sometimes it would help to have it on the right direction, Sheila. I thought, why is that stem way the heck over there? Lining it up upside down. Okay, so we're going to bring our stem up, and let's go ahead and stamp a little bit of that soft suede on there. And again, if you want a really dark stem, you could go with the Early Espresso or one of the other colors, but I just felt like we were getting enough of the color that I liked, and it looks good with the greens and the reds. And you get, again, bringing in your natural shadowing that you're getting from it. Beautiful. I love it. All right, so we're going to real quickly take that one out and cut it, and that way you can see all the different apples that we let that dry.